Now, live from the 13 Now Digital News Desk, this is the Friday Night Fever Afterburn, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning.
Welcome to Friday Night Fever Afterburn, Week 7 of the season. 7 weeks, we are on the downhill track. It's in the books. We are going to go ahead and look at those scores for tonight. Starting out at Arnold, where you were this evening, the Marlins picking up their second straight win, 34-24. Pretty competitive one out there against Rutherford. Bay at Marianna, that's where I was tonight over at Tommy Oliver Stadium. Scoreless in the first half. Bay gets 14 in the second half. They win in shutout fashion. They win their 5th in a row. Choctaw, they roll over South Walton. That is a very tough team over there. Despite their record, they have played some tough competition. South Walton falls 27-62 to those Indians. Northview and Blountstown, the Chiefs look like they could be a legitimate contender in Class 1 Rural this year. They shut out those Tigers 49-0.
Liberty County, the Bulldogs visiting over at Wewa-Hitchcock. They took that one 34-0. Chipley heading over to Tallahassee, visiting McClay. Chipley coming out on top for their 6th straight win, 33-28. Bozeman over there visiting the new Destin football team. Bozeman gets that one in overtime, 20-14. And Vernon visits Port St. Joe. They win that one 48-0 after that win over Blountstown last week.
And then looking at the last games, the one with Cottondale, they were over in Franklin County, over in the Eastern time zone. Cottondale winning 3 in a row now. Coach over in the gang, 3 in a row, 44-18 over the Seahawks. And then that last game on Thursday night, last night at Tommy Oliver Stadium, a tough one for Tommy Joe Whitten and the Dolphins, 35-38. Navarre takes that one. But let's get into those games. Our game of the week. This is a slow week for us. Only 9 total games being played tonight between all of our 21 teams. 9 total games. Let's start out at Gavlex Stadium. Tell us a little bit about that Arnold and Rutherford matchup.
You know, it was pretty head-to-head. Nothing crazy from that game. You know, like I told you earlier, I think the O-line for Arnold struggled a little bit, causing Seth Hernandez to struggle a little bit. I mean, they did put him in as running back later in the first quarter, and he looked really good as a running back. I mean, as you can see, he really has the ability to run, so it looked good on him. A couple overthrown passes, a couple missed grabs. I mean, it wasn't the cleanest game for either team, but Arnold did get that job done. I think they learned a lot about the team this week, and they have 2 straight wins, so I think that'll be good momentum for Arnold to carry into next week. No,
I definitely agree. And again, 34-24 in the Marlins' favor. 2 in a row on their home field. Like you mentioned, momentum is big. Rutherford, they just can't catch a break so far this year. They have had, like we mentioned, one of the toughest schedules in all of the state coming into this one. And then Arnold, they get the win. So again, those Marlins, I know they're happy. They came off a bye week, well rested. Now on homecoming night, getting a win. That's always feels great for them. So big one over there for Coach Campbell. We're going to check in at Tommy Oliver Stadium, Bay and Marianna. If you like offensive highlights, I'm sorry, you should probably just turn this off now because there are not many. It was defense. And these are 2 of the better defenses in the area. It showed tonight. As you're going to, start off, Bay did get a couple plays going. They were working the ball up the field. I would like to see the overall yardage difference between the 2 teams because Bay certainly did work it up the field a little more than the Bulldogs did. But like you see there, fumbles, we had a couple turnovers.
They were on it.
Both teams could not get anything in the first half. We were scoreless in the first half. I was there the whole time, just waiting for something to happen. Bay did get close one time, but then with some fumbles, some penalties right before the half, Marianna drove them all the way out of the red zone. So, again, Bay wins this one 14-0. That is their, 5th in a row? 5th in a row for Bay. Or is it 4? Yes, 5. I'm confused at this point. But they went week 0 up to Enterprise, and they lost, and now they have won every single game. They're undefeated at Tommy Oliver. 14-0. That crew, they are one of the best defenses. A lot of seniors on that unit. 22 seniors. It was senior night. They all came out on the field as captains. senior night for that gang, and this one they really want it. This unit, so
That's
many
crazy
seniors over there.
already.
What do you think of that Bay and Marianna game?
Well, I'm not too surprised. I mean, maybe thought Bay would extend that lead a little bit more, but Marianna was coming off that tough loss last week, so I think maybe wanted to prove a point. But like I said, Coach Glover for Marianna said this is one of the best defenses he's ever seen. He's a defensive mind, and Bay's had that dominant defense all season. So it's no surprise that it was a very defensive heavy game instead of, crazy offensive play. So not too surprised, but I think Marianna did a really good job of holding Bay 14.
Right, and I heard Coach Brown over on the sidelines, he was apologizing to his offensive coordinator saying, hey, or apologizing to his defensive coordinators that is saying, hey, you guys are doing everything. Like, you guys are doing it all. We got to get it. We got to get the job done. I'm sorry, we're going to get the job done. They did. They scored 14 in the second half. They got the win. I know they're excited over there. South Walton and Choctaw. We have the two green jersey teams over there on the west end. South Walton, they bounced back last week, but I tell you what, this Choctaw team is a serious sleeper. They, like we mentioned, Rutherford having a tough schedule. Choctaw probably plays one of the toughest schedules in the state. I'd have to look that up and see because they've been competing every week with the likes of Niceville, who's a top 25 team through all classifications. They really showed their size tonight, and they were just talking about how big these guys were. Courtney was talking about that tonight. What do you think of Choctaw going into South Walton and getting this one?
Well, I think at the beginning, South Walton was able to kind of fight back. Courtney, said it was like a ping pong match, just very back and forth. But I think Choctaw just was able to sneak ahead, and the Seahawks just were slow. They just couldn't make it happen. I think, Pierce Spurlin still being out, obviously, that never helps. But it's interesting because South Walton also had that extra time. They played a Wednesday game last week, so they had a little bit extra practice. But I just think, like you said, Choctaw is a good team, and they just came over and really showed who's boss and just really put the score up on South Walton for sure.
Right, 27-62 is the final over there. And again, Coach T's and the gang, they are going to have to bounce back this week because it's not going to get any easier. They got Bay at home next week. Bay red hot. That is going to be pretty much the deciding match for that district title next week, still early on in the season. But again, 27-62 in Choctaw's favor. The next one, I see Mr. John Brock down in the comments. How surprised are you at that Blountstown score? We're pretty surprised. Northview, they look good. Very, very good. We're going to look at this one. 49-0 shutout. What did you see from this one tonight?
Well, poor Blountstown, coming off that loss to Port St. Joe last week, I know they definitely wanted to pick up a win this week. I was a little surprised to see, I think there's some pieces that need to be worked on, struggling offensively. Marianna Hover had a couple good plays. He even took our camera guy, Jake, out 2 times over there. He didn't fall to the ground, but Marianna Hover was going for Jake. But, I just think their offense is just slowed throughout the season, so I think that's just definitely something they need to work on, and the defense just needs to put some more pressure on. But tough loss for Blountstown for sure. I know they have a lot of capabilities, but just weren't able to execute on this game.
Right, and Blountstown, we've talked about it earlier this year. When you have one of your best players transfer to IMG Academy, that is going to hurt. And then you have probably your, if not best player on the team coming into the season, losing him to injury. So your 2 best defensive backs and probably offensive weapons coming into the year, losing them, one transferring and one to injury, that definitely hurts Blountstown. I know they'll bounce back because that crew, they got what it takes, but Northview, 49-0. I would not be surprised if they move into probably the top 3 or 4 in the state this week, and I could definitely see them as a legitimate contender to bring home a state title. Checking in on the rest of those scores, I know John Brock, we're going to give him a shout-out because those constant tweets telling us, keeping us updated on the game, fantastic. Whether it's the Chipley game or whether it was the Liberty County game, we appreciate it. 34-0, Liberty County's favor. Tell us a little bit about that one, Kaylee.
At the beginning, you kind of see Weewa. I think Weewa defensively looked good. They were able to grab this kick, start off with the ball, not able to do anything with it, turns it over to Liberty County. Roddenberry on this one, it's going to be an interception. But this is really one of the only bad plays I've seen from Roddenberry from this game. I think he looked really strong. They were able to, it was kind of a slow game, just slowly move those chains for them, but they got it done. I mean, the 7-0 slow first half, but they were able to kind of really inch out on top in the second half. So I think this was a big and good win for Liberty County. Not too flashy from these highlights, what you see, but just some good plays, just execution, moving the ball, moving the chain. So, big win for them.
Right. 34-0 in Liberty County's favor. They've had a tough go of it the last couple weeks, playing at Sneeds, who's looked real good and now on a bye. Again, 34-0, Liberty County gets this one. We will Hitchcock on a little bit of a slump right now. So these are two teams that we're going to see kind of late in the year, making those push for those last spots in Class 1R. And Liberty County right now, this is going to give them a big boost. I see in the comments, how about those Tigers from Chipley? Yes, we are going to talk about those Tigers from Chipley. Going over into McClay tonight. This one, wish we could have been there. We did get these highlights. We're going to shout out our friends over in Tallahassee. They get us these highlights looking pretty crisp. Talk about that pass right there. Neil Adams, what a dart. The Chipley Tigers, this one going all the way to the last second in the game. What did you think of the Tigers going over there, playing up a couple classes and getting a win at McClay?
They look good. I mean, I was over at Chipley 2 weeks in a row earlier in the season, and I heard you say Neil Adams' name earlier, and I thought, that's a name I haven't heard in a while, coming off the bye and then just not being over there. So it's good to see them kind of back in action, putting on that pressure. Big game for them. I mean, they're definitely an exciting team to watch this season. So I think traveling over to Tallahassee, playing McClay, picking up that win, really impressive for them. So I'm excited. 6-0. Only two teams in our area, 6-0, with Sneeds and Chipley.
Teams left, and like we mentioned, we'll probably have to check in on both those teams this upcoming week, see what the coaches have to say about how they're going there. I did see, DeQuavius Sorey having a couple of touchdowns tonight. That's the Auburn commit over there having a big night. Neil Adams, he's just continuously proven. Last year he's kind of in that game manager role, and now I think he's kind of getting to the point where he's like, okay, like he can go out and win you a ball game. And we talked about it, Chipley hasn't truly been tested, so far this year. They've played, a lot of 1A teams, which of course they are a 1A or 1R, whatever you want to call it, team, but they've kind of cruised through that competition. This one playing up a few classes, and they still hang on, despite the adversity at the end of the game. So again, Coach Buchanan, those Tigers, big shout out to you guys. 6-0. I bet it feels real nice coming off a bye. Yeah, go Tigers. Big week for Tigers. Bozeman and Destin. We don't have the highlights of that one. That one going in overtime. It was 14-14 heading in. A tough match over there. Destin, they're pretty scrappy crew over there. They got the win earlier in the year against North Bay Haven. Bozeman having some struggles. We want to send out some thoughts to Peyton Gay. We saw out for the year. Very talented quarterback and baseball player over at Bozeman, but they still hang on and get to win tonight. They needed this one because if they're going to sneak in the playoffs, they have to win a few more games. Vernon and Port St. Joe. Yeah, Port St. Joe. They are the real deal. And after Blountstown last week, this one was just, a lot of fun for them, I'm sure. Cottondale and Franklin and Navarre and Mosley. We do have the Mosley highlights. You were over that game last night. I know any Mosley fans over here probably don't want to see us, but tell us what you saw last night.
Yeah. Like I told you again, I think Mosley's been struggling with a little bit of O-line issues. Sammy Freitas didn't have his best game last night. Really not a great one. I think he still has a lot of potential. I think they're just struggling a little bit. They used Chima a lot. He scored 2 touchdowns while I was there in the first half, so he's definitely a key player. Isaac Paul looked pretty good last night. Randy looked pretty good, just not much. I mean, this team has a lot of talent, so it's the talent you want to see. Didn't get to see too much of it. Navarre was just able to really, on the kick return, just taking it all the way to the house, putting up 7 points on them just like that. So it's just hard when they, can execute on plays like that. And then, Mosley trying to do the same thing. Isaac Paul, the Raiders are going to be all over him, kind of taking him down. So I think it wasn't a bad game. 38-35, but definitely a loss Mosley didn't want to have, and they have the potential, just the execution wasn't completely there for them.
Right. Mosley, they got Crestview next week, and then they got Niceville coming up soon. We are going to talk about some of those next week's games. We got on Thursday, Crestview again, like we said, at Mosley. St. John Paul II, they're going to be at Arnold, and Sneeds at Lighthouse
Lots of
Christian. So
Thursday.
3 Thursday night games, those undefeated Sneeds Pirates. Let's see what we got on Friday.
North Bay Haven is over at Rutherford over at Tommy Oliver. Bay is going to visit South Walton. That'll be an interesting game. Walton visiting taking on Pensacola Catholic, and Blountstown against Baker.
Right, and then we got Port St. Joe versus Bozeman. Bozeman, getting that win tonight. That one could be interesting. Vernon versus Graceville. 2 teams who have not quite cracked the win column, but this will be an interesting one because somebody's going to have to come away with the win. Yeah. 2 of the youngest teams for sure. Graceville, I know they're ready to get back out on the field, having a week off. And then we got Pecanton Charter. I don't even know who they are, I'm going to be honest. Pecanton Charter, they're going to be at Cottondale. Hitchcock, they're going to be at Franklin County. Pike Liberal Arts, we've seen them multiple times this year from Troy, Alabama. They're down at Liberty County. And we got a few more.
Holmes County versus Freeport. That should be a good one. Destin versus Chipley, and Marianna versus Gadsden County.
Yeah, so all hands on deck next week.
Yeah.
Every team in the region is playing. Whereas tonight, we had a lot of teams off. Everybody's back in action. This is a slow one. Everybody's gonna have to wake back up because also from this point on, pretty much every win matters if you're trying to get in those playoffs. Biggest one next week. Which one? Who you got your eye on for next week?
I think that Bay South Walton game is going to be exciting to see that Bay defense. I mean, South Walton's still pretty strong offensively. When I think of them, I think a strong offensive game, but they do have a strong defense as well. So, I think those 2 teams clashing will be interesting to see. Right. And I haven't seen Bay yet, so.
That's true. Bay undefeated in their district, and we have South Walton undefeated in their district. So that is probably more than likely going to be what decides that district is next week's game. You'll still have Bay to play Rutherford, and you'll still have South Walton to play North Bay Haven. But this is probably going to be the deciding game next week. Again, we got Bozeman winning 20-14. That's right, over in Destin. They pulled that one out in overtime. Chipley, Northview, Sneeds, and St. Joe won our playoffs. I would have to say, those are certainly some teams to watch out for. I can certainly see those teams potentially going into the playoffs with a bye, but we'll have to wait and see. Don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves before we go. This is a quiet week, but we got a lot happening next week. Anything really stand out to you this week?
I'm excited for Cottondale. I mean, 3 wins in a row. I mean, that's big for this team. They've really gotten some momentum, so it'll be exciting to see if they can continue that out, and excited to see for the Hornets.
Right, and we'll have to see if this week I can figure out who it is that they're playing, because
yeah,
we'll figure it out. Sorry if you go to that school and I'm offending you, but anyway, that's gonna do it for us this week. You see the lights going off once again. That's the tell. That's the tell.
Yeah.
Week 7 is in the books. All those highlights that we had for tonight, all the wins of our teams are going to be on the website, mypanhandle.com. Click on the sports tab. You'll find it all there. Till then, we'll see you next week.